UK.
Dominic King. Daytimes with Dom.
BBC Radio Kent.
Now today on Daytime, we look at how to maintain friendships after having children, or if you've become grandparents. How's your relationship changed with friends who seem to be no longer available to you? Does it work both ways? You can WhatsApp me, 08000 321 333, start your message with the word Kent. There might be a social contract that you turn up for those with children, but do you find yourself in a social silo if you're child-free? Our daytime relationship coach, Teresha Young, is with me. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Dom. How are you doing today?
I'm really well. I wonder whether this is something that is potentially opening Pandora's box here, because we don't always like to talk about our relationships, and especially ones that might have a touch paper, which we'll call children.
Yes, that's so true, because it's quite a sensitive area, especially as we know, many people are so protective of their children. Don't you say a bad word about my children. So when children come into this scene, it can actually cause a little bit of distance, not necessarily intentionally, but we do have to acknowledge that sometimes there can be a shift in the availability of new parents and grandparents when it happens.
Okay, so what I want to look at is how we navigate through what can be a very difficult and stormy water for so many. I think one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this today is you often hear that there's a kind of distance that happens between maybe, certainly if you're a grandparent, your friends who might not have children, that you don't necessarily have that connection with them, so you don't have that contemporary kind of discussion going on. So how do we work on that first? Let's start there.
Yeah, it's very interesting what you say there, because it sometimes isn't a big fallout that happens. It's just small things that start to generate in the dynamics of the relationship. So sometimes, for example, you might hear about a meetup and you haven't been invited to it, and you think, oh, it would have been nice to have been invited. Or sometimes realizing that, like you said, the conversations just aren't the same because there's an element of disjointment going on. So I would say what is the best thing to do in that situation is really notice what is happening. The best thing that we can do is to communicate, because friendships thrive on honesty. And if something feels off, speak about it from the heart. No blaming, no judgment, just purely stating what you've noticed, like how it makes you feel, what you would like going forward, and then open it up for conversation. Sometimes we're just not vulnerable enough, Dom, I would say, in our relationships. And even just saying things like, I miss you, or I miss us. And I'm not saying that to make you feel bad or guilty or put any pressure on you. As I understand things have changed, I just want you to know that I still love and value our friendship. Just that level of transparency can be enough to actually heal the relationship.
Teresha, let's hear from Lauren, who's a young mum of 2 in Coxheath, who has sent this voice note to us.
Hi, Dom. I could chat about this topic for days because for me, and I think for everybody, having children is such an enormous change to your identity and a massive shift in your priorities that I don't think it's realistic to expect that your relationships are going to all be the same afterwards, because you're not the same person after children as you were before. And I think that can be a really enormous change for a lot of people, and it definitely was for me. And I found that brand new friends suddenly became really close to me really quickly, and a lot of friends that I'd been close with for a long time pulled away. And I guess I've always been one of those people that believes that you have friendship or seasons of friendship. So people are in your life for certain periods of time for certain reasons, like they might come to teach you things or to share experiences together, but they don't always stay there. And there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't have to be a huge, massive fallout or anything. It's just friendship for seasons. And sometimes, well, quite a lot of the time, sorry if you can hear my 10-month-old in the background, quite a lot of the time having kids is a really good, shines a light on one of those seasons changing and coming into something else. So I find that your closest friends and the people that you share the most genuine, deepest connections with, they will always show up after you've had children, because you're not able to prioritize your friendships in the same way. God, I can't send a text in the same way anymore. I lose my phone about 40 times a day now, so people are probably still waiting for replies from me from last week. But yeah, I found that people who I thought would be there wouldn't necessarily be there. And they're not that bothered. And that's absolutely fine, because just because of my life choices and my decision to have children doesn't mean that everybody has to be on board. You just think about those people, you send them a bit of light and love, and then you kind of move on. But it's the people will automatically fit themselves into categories of being there and not being there. But definitely having children is one of those huge things that happens in life that completely reshapes your friendship circle. And I would imagine a lot of people will think like that.
Thank you, Lauren. Thoughts, Teresha, especially that seasons of friendships. It's got quite a lot to unpack there, but really, I mean, we were there in the thick of it as well.
Yes. Well, do you know what? Lauren made two key points there. She spoke about the grief, like the loss of identity. And it's so true, because you're trying to figure out as a new person, as a new parent, who on earth am I now? Who am I now? And so even if you want to pour into friendships, you just can't, because there's time, energy and focus. And it can all feel really, really limited. Just like what Lauren was saying there, even responding to WhatsApp messages can feel like a bit of a challenge. So we have to acknowledge the grief that new parents, maybe even grandparents, can go through too, because there might not be the spontaneous friend or the late night caller or the regular catch-up partner. And they may even be feeling guilty about that. I'm not sure whether Lauren even experienced any sort of guilt that they can't show up for their friend as they used to be. So we do really need to acknowledge that. Also, what Lauren spoke about there is a silo. So she spoke about how people start to kind of gravitate towards different people. She's got new friends. So she's probably gravitating more towards people who are in the baby. She's got a 10-month-old there. So like baby or toddler groups, nursery drop-off, and their school gates, you tend to kind of gravitate towards those type of people. And then the friends on the other side, who haven't got the children necessarily, will start to form closer relationships with others who can be there for them, who can have those lengthy chats and those back and forth WhatsApp messages. So what happens is that over time, both groups can end up in separate circles, even if the friendship still means something to both of them.
You can WhatsApp in your thoughts on this, 08000 321 333, start with Kent. Very interested in that part about, seasons of friendships, the kind of in and out, Teresha, that people might have in life, which is not necessarily a bad thing. My other thing, though, is to take a look on the complete other side. Society, and I mentioned this with Anna on the wake-up call this morning when I was chatting with her, that there's a kind of sometimes a feeling that everything is in society is pushed towards once someone has a child, or children, then everything else goes on hold. And if you don't have children, you are the respective party who has to kind of go towards them as opposed to having your own experience, maybe. So there's a lot weighted towards one way. Now, that's just fact, I guess, that they're looking after children, and grandchildren particularly. So I think for grandparents, they become the daytime caregivers. Yeah. And for a lot of those grandparents, they have these lovely relationships where they were going out to the theatre and doing all this stuff. But now they're stuck basically doing the childcare because of whatever reason they're having to do it. That's tough, isn't it?
It is so tough. And this is why it does work both ways, and empathy goes both ways. So when we have children, sometimes our conversations can tend to be solely around the children. And for those on the receiving end of it, it can actually create some distance. So I think whilst obviously children are beautiful, let's see how you can balance the conversation too, to have it more adult-led too. So there would have been reasons why you had a friendship in the first place, even before the children came in. So tap back into those things that you used to enjoy as friends, because I think it's so important to strike that balance so people don't feel a sense of loss or freedom. Because sometimes, just like you said, going to the theatre, you can have that sense of loss. So how can you still nurture the conversation? So I think being very intentional about what you talk about when you are connecting is so important.
I mentioned going to the theatre, going to the pub, going and doing anything. Lovely to have you with us as always. If you'd like to WhatsApp in, 08000 321 333, start with Kent. Teresha Young, Daytime's relationship expert, really bringing that out for us from those initial thoughts and conversations. And that's what we do here on the Daytime Show here at BBC Radio Kent.